Hello. In this video, we'll go over how to set up and use version 3 forms in Service Autopilot. Forms is a robust feature in Service Autopilot which lets you collect data from your clients and employees. They're customizable and versatile in how you can use them. Some really popular use cases of forms are website lead captures, client opinion surveys, and job checklists for your crews. With our pre-built templates, it's also really easy to get started. Before we jump in, a couple of disclaimers about version 3 forms. First, the current version of forms, you might call them V2 forms, will not be converted into V3 forms. Because of the enhanced functionality, there is simply not a way to convert existing forms without sacrificing features on V3 forms. You will still have access to V2 forms so that you have plenty of time to learn and recreate those into V3 forms. Also, V3 forms published to the mobile will appear exclusively on the team app. They will not appear on the legacy app, so if you want to create forms for your field teams to use, we highly recommend switching to the team app. So let's get started. In Service Autopilot, I'm under Marketing and Forms. And this is my forms list. It behaves like other list screens, such as the invoicing screen. In this video, let's build a simple estimate request form that we could put on a website or share on a social media pages. Essentially, this is going to be something where leads wanting to learn and get an estimate from you could go fill out their information and then you could get back to them. So we're going to go over to the right and click on Add Form. Now, what's really great about getting started with forms is that you don't have to build these from scratch. We have a bunch of templates that you can use and pick from to get started. So for example, if we wanted to just pick this basic estimate request form, we could. We can go scroll down in this list to look at other ones or click the arrows to browse the other options. To show you some of the features though, I'm going to start with a blank form. So I'm going to click on blank form here and it'll ask you to put in the name. And this brings me to the forms builder. Essentially broken up into 3 stages. So this will walk you through exactly how to build forms. You have the design, configure, and publish stages. So right now we're on the design phase. And so here's where you're going to actually add fields to your form. So you'll start out here looking at all the fields. You have simple fields and advanced fields, as well as widgets. Your simple fields are going to have things like headers, drop-downs, numbers, things that are very basic. Advanced fields are going to be things a little more complex, maybe more customizable, also will map to certain fields in Service Autopilot by default, such as the name and address and email. You also have the credit card update form. One note on the credit card update form is that right now, this will only work with Clearant processing. So if you're not using Clearant processing, we do highly recommend you switch over. You also have widgets, which are just going to be either images, an attachment that you could have the user upload, or you could place YouTube or Wistia videos into your forms. And so I won't go through all of the different fields. There's a lot of things you can do here, and this would be a great spot to just really come in and look at all the fields and what they do if you're curious about it. I'm just going to add a couple of simple fields to get started here. First, we're going to start with the name field because whenever we get a lead, we got to ask their name and make sure that we know that. So we're going to go and click on name here. And that places the name field into this form. Now, let's go and click here on the header for name. And this is actually a field type of header, which is another field that you could put in individually here. What I'm going to do is adjust the label here. And I have more customization options. You'll see these on all the fields here. I'm going to go ahead and just make this bold. And then you'll notice we have the first name and last name fields. Let's click on the first name field. Again, it takes us to the edit options of that field. And we have the label, which is just saying first name. And then description, there's nothing in the description here, but if we wanted to, we could say, give it a description. This is pretty self-explanatory, but you'll notice that when we do that, it shows up here under the label. And so this is if you want to describe in further detail what to put in that field, you could add a description. And pretty much all of the fields that we have are going to have this description field. I'm going to take that out actually and turn that off. The placeholder text here as well, this is what shows up in here in the field itself. And again, we don't really need that, but we could put something in there if we wanted to. This is just something that would essentially maybe help a user with what to put in to that spot. We'll just go ahead and turn those off. You also have the option here to adjust the field width and make this a required field. This first name is a required field. You'll see the asterisk there in red means it's required. This one is not required. So in theory, we just need them to do a first name. We don't need a last name, but we could turn that on or off. Then the field mapping here is where, when the client fills this out or a lead fills this out on the website, where do we want that to appear in Service Autopilot? So if this was creating a lead or a client, this would appear as a first name. In other words, whatever they enter in there will be the first name in Service Autopilot. And so this is a great feature because it'll map a lot of different things such as address, email, phone number. That way you don't have to do double entry whenever you're creating and collecting these leads. You also have character limits as well. Some of these for some fields are adjustable, but the ones that are mapped are not adjustable only because our system only supports so many characters with a lot of these fields. You also have here advanced options. If you are a developer and you understand CSS, you have the ability to put in the CSS class down here, but this is really just for advanced users. Most people are not going to worry about that. So those are a lot of the field options, and most fields that you add to your form are going to have these customization options. So just know when you're adding fields, if you want to change, for example, the color of the label, you want to put a description, change the field width, you'll have the ability to do that in pretty much every single field that you put on your form. So let's add another field to this form. Let's say we want to collect not just the name, but we want the email as well. So I'm going to click on email here, and it's going to ask what type of email this is, and depending on what I select, it will go ahead and map that for me, so I don't have to go under the field options and map it. It'll do it automatically. So I'm going to say contact email here and add, and now let me make sure this contact email went in between the first and last name. So what I can do here is I can actually adjust the location of this field by going over to the right and clicking the arrow here to put it below the last name. A couple other options here. If you make a mistake, you can delete the selected field, or you can make a copy of it. If, for example, maybe I needed to also put the billing email in here, I wanted to collect that as well. So that's about enough for this page. And what I'm going to show you how to do is create a 2-page form. Now, you don't have to do this. In fact, if you were putting a contact us blurb on your website, this would be enough. You could just go ahead and publish this form as it is, put it on your website, and collect first name, last names, and emails. But let's say that we want to make this form a little bit longer. We want to collect maybe some more information about the client, such as what services they want, or maybe their address, so we could send them an estimate. So what we're going to do is actually add a second page to this form. So I'm going to go down here and click the Add Page button. And you'll notice that it added page 2, and it takes me to that page. And I'm going to just call this Services and rename it. I could go back and rename page 1 if I wanted to. I'm just going to call this Services though. And then what I'm going to do is enter in first the address, because I do probably want to know the physical address. So I'll click on that and I'll say this is the service address. Add that in. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in a checklist, because this will give the user multiple options to select, which that's what we want, because in theory they may want to pick multiple services that they're interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and add the checklist to the form, It adds it to the bottom, and then I'll click on checklist, and I'm going to go ahead and modify this so it asks what services they want. Now, we're just keeping this very generic here. Now, you'll just notice what happened. There's a green banner that popped up. What that's doing is actually automatically saving this form. So that's one great thing about building these forms. You don't have to constantly save your changes. As you go and build out forms, they will save automatically. So your changes save. You don't have to worry about saving. Every time you exit out of this form, it will go ahead and save it as well. Now, let's talk about the rules for forms. So what are rules? When I click on this, what rules are going to do is basically allow me to either add a tag or jump to another page based on a response. So the best way to illustrate this is, let's say that I want to go to a different page and ask them a different set of questions if they're a commercial client or a commercial lead. So what I'm going to do, I would go back probably to page 1 here, and under fields, I'm going to actually add in a multiple choice field here, and make sure to move this to the bottom. And I'll call it property type. Take off the description. And now one cool thing here, I could go ahead and just type in for the multiple choice options, commercial or residential, but the system is smart enough to know that if I select, for example, account type, it will go ahead and put in the options for me here. So you'll see this with other fields. It will automatically create the multiple choice options if you put in the field mapping first. So that makes it really quick to build these. So now what I want to do is, depending on their response, maybe I want to go to a different page. So I'm going to click on rules here. And when you're doing rules, they're by field. So you need to make sure to click on a field and then do the rules on that field. This rule here, we can add it. And now there's two things you can do with rules. You can add tags, or you can jump to different pages, or remove tags as well. So I'm going to say here, if property type exactly matches commercial. So if it's commercial, then I could add a tag. So I could go select a tag to add if I tag my commercial and residentials. In this case, I'm going to jump to page, and I would have to actually build out another page to jump to. I only have one here in this list, but let's say that I had another page here. I called it commercial services. Instead of going to from page 1 going to services, the user would go to page 3 for commercial services. So this is how you would create rules, and essentially you could create different paths. The one thing to keep in mind here is, because there's only one submit button on the form, you have to end at the same place. So if you have two paths, there has to be one final page that has a submit button on that page. So you'd have to take every single user to that same page if you have different paths. Just keep that in mind. All right, but that's the concept of rules. This makes forms really powerful because you can really hone in and ask specific questions based on their responses. So if they, for example, say that they're residential or commercial, that could go to one page. Maybe if they select one particular service, it goes to another page. Ask them more questions about that service. There's a lot of things you could do with this. This is just a very simple example. So I'm going to go ahead and actually delete that. And I'm going to go up to settings here. This is kind of the last step of the design phase. You can adjust the name if you need to. You can also pick a different theme. So this would override the font and color that's already in there for the default theme. So I'll go ahead and just show you what this looks like here. You see that's a red theme. Let me go back to the default though. And again, if you're an advanced user, you can adjust the CSS class here for this form. But again, really only if you're a developer and you understand what CSS is. So now I'm ready to go on to the next stage. I'm just building a simple form here where I'm asking for an email and the services that they're interested in. I might, if I was actually in a real scenario, put other things here, like maybe I would put in a phone number, but just to keep it simple, I'm going to move on and go to the next page. And this is the configure stage of building the form. So what this means is essentially, what do we want to have happen when a user submits the form? So the first thing you have here is the confirmation message. It'll default to a simple message here, which you could keep. If you wanted them to be directed to a document that you built in Service Autopilot, you could select the document here. You would have to build it first. Or a web page, let's say you have a thank you page on your website and you want the user to be directed there, you could do a web page. And then email notifications here. If you want someone to be notified when the form is filled out, maybe you've got a salesperson in the company, maybe you want to send a copy of the form back to the client or lead that you filled it out for, you could add an email notification. Let's go ahead and add one for a salesperson in this company. So I'm going to click on add notification. And you can either use a document that you already have created and just select it. I'm going to go ahead and do a custom email though. Choose a recipient. Let's say this is our salesperson. If you're choosing the client, just know that that would either be the billing email or contact email. So that would send it back to the client or account that you're filling out this form for, or that's filling out the form. And then who do you want to say the notification email is from? We could just put our company name and email, or a person. And then here's where you could customize the notification. So because this is going to a salesperson, I might want to say, and then this would ask if I want to do a copy of the form. I'm going to go ahead and click yes, so that a link to the form response is included in this email notification, so they just can click on that right from the email and follow up. Go ahead and save. And now we've done one notification here. If you wanted to, you could add more notifications. We go to account management, the next step. This is another really powerful feature of V3 Forms. So what this will do is, if you turn this on, this will mean that in this case, when the form is submitted, it's automatically going to create a lead from the form response. So you don't have to go in and create a lead. The lead automatically gets created. Likewise, if you had a form that you're filling out from the mobile app that maybe had a field that you were changing, like a custom field that was adjusting, when they fill it out, if automatically manage accounts is turned on, that field will get updated when you fill it out. If you turn this off, it doesn't mean that fields for accounts don't get updated. It just means that you have to go in and manually create or update those from the forms response list. So if you want the process to be quick, you can turn this on. And then the update options, you can either replace the existing fields on an account and add new fields, or you cannot replace any fields but only add new fields. So in this case, we want to replace all existing fields and add new fields because this is for a new lead, so we don't have any fields yet. So we're going to add all the fields that they submit from that form and make that the account information. And this final option is actually a new thing, very powerful, because what it will do is actually do a check in your Service Autopilot account to see whether there's a lead or client that already exists. So let's say you put this lead capture form on your website and it was an existing client that just went on there to request more services, or maybe they're a former client that's going on to request more services. What the system will do is it will look to see if there's a matching first or last name and email in your system. That's this option right here. And it will go ahead and match that form to that existing record in your system. And what this will do is prevent a duplicate lead from getting created when an existing lead or client fills out this form on your website. So you have different options that you can get more or less specific. For example, if you just want it to match on the email address, or you want to customize it and you want to add your own criteria for how it's matching, you could do that as well. You could simply add the fields. Just know that the fields that you're adding here have to be fields that are on the form if you're customizing it. I'm going to go ahead and just click on this option for first or last name and email matches, mostly because in theory, if a form response that comes in with the same first or last name and email address as an existing client or lead in my account is likely that same client or lead who's filling out the form. One warning here, if you do choose to account match on something custom, in other words here you choose other, just don't choose something too vague like have it only match on the first name, because likely there are a lot of accounts in your system that have the same first name. So you want to make sure that it's specific enough where it would be attached to the correct account. So in this case, it's probably a pretty good check here. Let me go to tag settings. What you can also have is when a user clicks on the form or submits a form, tags can be added to the account. So this is great for automations. If they submit the form, that can trigger something else in automations. So for either of these, you just click on which one you want to do, and you can go ahead and add tags or also remove tags. We don't need that for this particular form. And that's the configure stage for forms. Let's go to the next stage, which is publish. Now, as soon as we get to this next stage, what will happen is it will bring you to a page that will give you some warnings. So there's two types of warnings. This one is a suggested warning, and what this is telling me is there are services or one field that's not mapped anywhere, which is not necessarily an issue, but it's just telling me that this field is not mapped to anywhere in Service Autopilot. That's a suggested fix. A must fix will appear in red, and this will basically be something you have to fix before you can publish your form. So we're not going to let you create a form that's not going to work. We're going to basically prompt you to fix any issues that you have with your form. And so in this case, I'll just show you what it will do. If I go over to fix issue, it's going to actually take me back to the field that has an issue, which is this one. It selects it, and then it highlights in red the part that is potentially an issue. So if I had a custom field for services or interested services, I could go ahead and map it to that custom field, but I don't have to. This is just a suggested fix, but it's not something that I necessarily need to do. So once you're done fixing the issues, you can go back to publish, and this will let me move on here. I'm going to go down to form options here, and this is where I can choose where this form is going to be published. So we have different published options. In this case, it's going to be a public form, so I'm going to click on website. So there are different options that you can use for a public form. You have a hosted form, which is just a URL on a separate web page hosted by us. You have the embedded form, which you can place in your website. If you do this one, it's a great option because if you make changes to your form, it'll actually update those changes on your website, so you don't have to keep uploading that form. But you also have the source code. So if you're a developer or you have a developer that really wants to get more custom with the form, they can actually get the complete source code here. And once you click publish on this, I'm going to go ahead and do that. What it will do is allow you to click this blue link, and it will actually send an email to your webmaster. You can go ahead and put in the recipient and the subject line, and it'll send the webmaster an email with a link to all of these options so they can just figure out how to put that on your website. Now, I'm going to go through the other options. So we have mobile here. You can publish forms to the team app. So if you click on this, you can publish forms to specific accounts. So if you click accounts, you can say which accounts this form will show up on when you're doing services for them on the mobile app. So you can choose specific accounts. Maybe you've got a commercial account that needs certain things done and you want to fill out the form to make sure they get done. You can do that. Or you can have specific roles fill out the form. So if you have, maybe you just want your team leaders to fill out a certain form, you can do that. And then if the form is required to fill out, you can say yes, which means it will prompt them to fill out the form at the start or end of a visit. So they can't actually complete that visit until the form is filled out. And you also have the ability to do the same thing, but with services. So if you want to associate forms with particular services, maybe, for example, you have a fertilization weed control service that needs a specific form every time you do that service, you could go ahead and choose that here. And when you do that service, the form's always going to pop up. And again, these things are just for the team app, so it won't show up on the legacy app. And same thing with roles here. And then finally, you have timesheet actions. So this would be if you want the form to get filled out when they clock into different items, like clocking in for the day. Let's say they have a checklist at the beginning of the day or a checklist at the end of the day, or clocking into break or out of break. So those are timesheet actions. Again, things you can do on the team app. Likewise, you could also publish this to the office. And this would mean that it would appear in different places in your Service Autopilot account. So you can associate it with accounts, meaning it will be available on account screens, or services, which means that it will be available on the visit editor. When you're looking at a job or particular visit for that job, you can fill out the form there. And general just means that it's available in the form's response list. So you can go to the form's response list and fill out that form. It's just a generic form. And then finally, you have mobile and office, which lets you publish to a place on the team app and a place in the office as well in Service Autopilot. So again, this particular form is a public one, so it's one that we want to put on our website. It's already published. I'll go ahead and just click that again. But when I exit out of this, it'll take me back to the review screen for this form. If I needed to go back and edit it, I could go over to Edit and make any edits that I need to. If I do make an edit, though, what I need to do is I would need to, for that to actually appear in the form, you would need to republish it again. So just making the change and having it save doesn't actually make those changes appear. You have to publish the form again if you make a change. What will happen is the form will have pending changes and it'll just be waiting for you to publish it again. Let's go ahead and pretend that we are going to fill this out. Maybe we're a lead. I'm going to go ahead and copy the hosted form URL. So now let's pretend that I'm a new lead filling out this form. Go next. And submit. And now we should have a form response here. So I'm going to exit out of this. And back on the review screen for this form, I can click the option to view responses. And I can go and click on the form here. And I can see what the response was. And the status is completed because we had automatically manage accounts turned on. And I can see that account was updated. So this actually demonstrates the matching criteria ability of forms. Looks like we had an existing account named John Doe with the same email. And so this form, when it was filled out, updated that account. Another thing we'd see back on marketing and forms is the actual form that we just created. The website lead capture form, we'd see that it was published, and we could go back into it again to get to the review screen. And if we needed to unpublish it, or maybe we wanted to make a copy of it, we could do that, or review responses like we just did. But that's creating forms in Service Autopilot. It's a great feature that gives you a lot of customization and gives your clients, leads, and employees a great experience when filling them out. Again, it's really easy to get started building these by using our pre-built templates. Thank you so much for watching.